Hey, what's going on, folks? Good afternoon or evening. We are live once again. Let me get everything switched over and we will commence the drawing stream. Alright, let's turn on BGM. And we should have a video as well. Red Dragon resubscribed at tier 1 for 7 months. Sorry the alert didn't go off. I don't have alerts enabled on the loading screen so you can't hear them. But thank you for 7 months. It's very kind of you. How are you doing, Red Dragon? Hope your day has been going well. Oh man, my tablet's getting dusty. Alright. Red Dragon says, well, that's a so-so answer. Well, we'll take so-so. We'll take the moderate days along with the good days and the bad days. This week has been really busy. My job has been keeping me quite occupied. That's why I wasn't able to stream yesterday. But that's okay. We're here now, and we'll make the most of the session today and try and be productive. I see Red Dragon says upset yesterday and bad today. Well, hopefully you get a chance to just chill and vibe with the rest of us. That's generally what we try and do here. And maybe accomplish some work while we're at it. Okay. So let me explain what we're going to be working on today. Because today's going to be a little bit of a different focus compared to the last stream. We are going to loop back to the Monster Hunter Fusions. I have not had a chance to develop some of the sketches, and I want to do that before we get back and look at the progression there. Today we are going to be working on some prototyping information, or prototyping concepts for an upcoming project. I'm not going to say which one it is, but I am going to explain sort of the premise and what I'd like to do and map out. Let's go. Oh, Jesus. We have a raid right at the start of the stream. Toxicure, Wazzy and crew. Thank you for the raid. Welcome, folks. We are just getting started. I don't have a whole lot to show off yet because we just went live, but thank you for the raid. Let me get a shout out for Wazzy. Oh, Blanky board. Just chatting, huh? What were you folks talking about today? Was it floor yelling day today? Thanks for the follow, Moon Mashu, Blind Cricket. Welcome, folks. Wazzy yells at me in all caps. Rock, you better be wholesome and not talk about Markiplier Omegaverse. Okay. I will not talk about Markiplier Omegaverse. Blind Cricket says, show off your nothingness. Well, here it is in all its glory. Alright. This is the type of drawing we do here on these streams. Pinky Ada says, right, give us your Mulan. Nobody gets to get cricket batted. I wasn't aware this was a hostile takeover. All right. Oh, we have a drop a beat from Rira. What's up, Rira? Welcome. Trickster, welcome. Phoenix, Almighty K11. Oh, there's a whole bunch of you folks. All right. All the redeems. All at once. and Red Dragon has gone bankrupt with every single redeem. All right, let me do the beat first, then we'll do the fact, then we'll do small so that we get the maximum amount of time on small. All right. Let me turn my headphones on. I understand that I should be better when people raid me, especially folks who might not have been here before, explaining what all this stuff is whenever I do things, especially if someone redeems something like drop a beat. So for folks who might not have seen it before, whenever someone redeems that, I've got to stop what I'm doing and freestyle a beatbox beat for all you lovely folks. Hence the headphones. So let's go ahead and do that first, and then we'll do all the rest of the redeems, and then we'll actually try and get some work done. Let's give it a try. It'll be a good sound check as well. The drum and bass switch. All right. Let me remove the headphones. And now we will turn on small mode. I'm going to stand on top of my tablet, right next to the advertisement GIF for the upcoming music project. And if you want to learn what that is, then use the command !SOTS in the chat to learn about an upcoming music project that I'm working on with Wazzy. And we'll see how long it takes me to remember to turn off small mode. Your mileage may vary anywhere from the full 5-minute timer to 40 minutes from now if I'm not paying attention. Oh, there we go. See, Red Dragon's got it. SOTS is looking to be released before the end of May. So this month, in fact. Don't have a set date yet. We're still finishing stuff up, but it'll be coming soon. So if you like RPG style music and unique Toxic Here style animations, keep your eyes peeled for SOTS, or Songs of the Spiral. Coming soon. Trademark. All right, we got to do fact. I don't know if I have any current facts. Let me pull up my list. I promise you we'll actually do drawing. Eventually. Maybe. All right, here's a fact from the past. So that redeem, I have a choice of either telling you folks a true fact about me or a fact about my home planet, homeworld. And since I haven't done a lot of those, I have to write some. We're going to go with a true fact about me. As some of you who've been around here a while know, and Wozzy probably says it all the time, I am very, very old. Your true fact is the first video game I ever played was in a bowling alley arcade a very, very long time ago. Like probably before some of you were born. And that's where all the trouble started. I've been a quote-unquote real gamer ever since. Almighty K11 says, unique toxic animation said in the same way as you provide emotional support to the team. I can't say much, but if you folks have never seen the type of stuff that I work on, Wozzy and I collabed on a project last year around this time. That's on my YouTube channel. That's where that link will take you. But we did a project called The Lost Kingdom last year, where I wrote 20 tracks inspired by old school video gamey RPG music. And Wozzy did animations for that. And so this year's project, Songs of the Spiral, is a sequel. So the characters you see in Lost Kingdom are going to be showing up in the animation for Songs of the Spiral with some new things, some new characters, new sort of storyline across 20 tracks in the style of old school gamey RPG type songs. So yeah, we've been working pretty hard on it. I'm excited to show it off. And we'll be doing it live on stream once we have a date set. It'll be a launch party like we normally do for the music releases. So if you follow Wozzy over on Twitter or me, either or, you'll be hearing us talk about it when it gets closer. All right, let me put this fact in the database, and then we will actually get to drawing and try and get some so-called art done. Let's save you. I'm keeping one eye on the timer, and we'll see if I remember to re-embiggen myself. I see Snake's coming in the stream. What's up, Snake? How you doing? Welcome. We are doing some concept work today. I haven't started yet because I got raided by the Toxicure crew right at the start. Mysterious Phoenix says, I don't think I ever told you actually inspired me to start messing around RPG Maker because of Lost Kingdom. Oh, really? I did not know that. Well, I will say, if you need music for your project, whatever it is, you can use my BGM tracks. They're royalty-free assets that people who make content can use. So if you want to use tracks from anything, doesn't have to be from Lost Kingdom specifically, but anything that I've made, then you can actually download them from Bandcamp and you can use them for whatever project. And that goes for anybody, not just Phoenix. I see Red Dragon has returned. And Snake says, playing an old game right now, Jedi Academy. Oh, nice. Shenanigans with the Force, I imagine. Okay. I was about to explain what we're doing today before all of you lovely people showed up. So we are doing some concept development for an upcoming project. I said at the top of the stream that I'm not really going to talk about which one it is, but it will be coming up for release later this year. And specifically, I want to do a mix of, I guess we can consider them creature concepts, because we have this idea of a conflict and duality. So I'll kind of explain a little bit about the setup and lore. Wouldn't worry too much about it because I'm still building the concept out. But we'll put some ideas here. So excuse my terrible handwriting. I could have been a doctor. The conflict is two forces opposing each other that are in said conflict. And we have let's call them divine beings versus, I will call them natural order. And I'll explain kind of what that means as we get there. So I want to do some concept development for these factions that are in play here. We'll see how many we get to, because these brainstorming sessions don't always yield a ton of results right away. But before I do that, let me turn off the timer and become a real boy again. And so what do I mean by divine beings versus a natural order? The way you can kind of define this is the divine beings would be things that are from like an ethereal or heavenly type plane. I don't want to just blanket label them as angels, but a lot of the ideas that I'm hopefully going to be able to flesh out here as we're working through this is going to be drawing from things like the ideas of biblically accurate angels and a lot of the kind of celestial heavenly beings you see in a lot of lore. That is what this faction here is talking about for divine beings. Natural order talks about a group that is aligned with more, I guess you can consider them pagan or sort of nature-based deities or forces. So things you would see in common RPG classes or classifications like druidic orders and people that are connected to the planet and natural spirits and whatnot. So these two factions are opposed to each other, and the whole point of the project is to show this conflict between these two. And I haven't figured out how I want to do art for it yet, or if I'm going to be commissioning people, but I want to get the concepts sort of fleshed out here. So that's what we're going to be experimenting with today, and coming up with ideas that hopefully I can turn into a pitch project or pitch for someone if I end up going the commission route. I could do it myself, but it's going to take a lot longer and probably not look as nice, which is why I like working with established artists, because they can do it better than I can. So what we're going to do is work on the sketch layer here. And for folks who might not have seen my art streams before, I do a lot of concept stuff here, and a lot of it is sort of rough sketched out, and then eventually down the road we get to fully lined and colored and rendered things as well. It just sort of depends. Red Dragon says, but money. Yeah, that's always one of the limitations is budget, of course. But that's one thing that I have to sort of plan whenever I'm working on these. If it's in the budget, then we can definitely look at that when it comes to commissions. And I've worked with some really talented people, and am working with some really talented people on things coming up. This project is not going to be the next one after SOTS. SOTS is going to be this month, like we talked about, and then the next release is probably going to be in the summer, before the end of summer. So we're looking at probably July or maybe early August, depending on how long it takes me to get all of the stuff figured out. But that project is going to be a chill album of BGM tracks, and I am currently working with a friend of the channel and frequent collaborator, Plops. They are doing the album art for the project. And so that should be interesting. I'll talk a bit more about that one when it gets closer. Snake says, well, with art having certain restrictions can make the project better sometimes. That's a very rare occasion. Yeah, what I tend to do is I'll have ideas for a project, and then if I think someone I know can do it better because their style is fitting for what I'm trying to do, that's what will drive me to want to work with them. It'll be kind of a matter of, can someone bring this idea to life better than I can if I did it myself? And so that's usually how we get the collaboration stuff that we've seen so far across the different projects. So one thing that I was thinking about, I've been thinking about this all week, and that's why I wanted to get this sort of concept session together before I forget everything. For the divine beings, and I haven't decided on a name for their faction yet. It's going to be a bit of a lore based project that we'll talk about when it launches. But taking into account some of the things like the biblically accurate angels, which is a type of design I really like. You folks have seen me do stuff with that before. I think it was on Wazi's stream we did biblically accurate Pokemon a long time ago. It was like last year. That was really fun. Just think the idea of things that are like heavenly beings being very kind of grotesque and nightmarish contrasts with the idea of what people stereotypically think of angels as like very pretty, graceful winged creatures, when in reality they're kind of depicted in a lot of literature as these very otherworldly, almost alien looking creatures. And so when we're mapping out the divine beings in this particular story, it's going to be taking a lot of ideas like that. But what I want to focus on, and this is something that we'll be kind of thinking about as we just sort of sketch out different ideas, and it's going to be kind of just random here, because the point is to brainstorm as many things as possible. I want to focus on the idea of asymmetry for this particular faction, which kind of goes against the divine order of the standard tropes of kind of heavenly celestial beings. They're very kind of regal, and even if they, like Snake is saying, kind of take the Bayonetta approach, where the outer exterior of these angelic creatures is very like perfect. Like they look like statues and they're very pretty and kind of cherubic in some ways, until their shell breaks and they're just gross nightmare monsters underneath. And so I want to take that idea when mapping out some of the things that we're going to do here, and we'll see kind of how that goes. Hey, Lava King's here. Lava King says my ribs hurt. Ah, yes, it's Thursday. It's judo day. How was your judo today? Must be effective if you're wandering in with bruised ribs, unless that was from something else. Just realized my BGM is not turned on. I've been talking away in dead silence. That's no good. Alright, let's zoom in a little bit and give us some closer space to work with. I definitely want to incorporate the idea of armor, not just kind of your stereotypical multi-eyed winged monstrosities. I want these particular beings to also be armored, because this is a conflict of war, essentially. So not only they have to look the part for what we're going for, but they also have to look like they're geared for war, and the same is going to go with the other faction. Lava King says, yeah, I had to flip people. I got flipped a bunch from my partner. Landed on my ribs. Ooh. That sounds very painful. And Lava King asks, anyway, Rocco, are you familiar with Ray Punk? Doesn't sound familiar. What is it? Is this a property, the name of a show or person, or give me more information? I can tell you if I've heard of it. Oh, sci-fi genre. Like it's like cyberpunk or something like that. I have not heard of Ray Punk. What is that? Oh, is it kind of like a post-apocalyptic? Oh, laser guns, deep space, and aliens. Oh, that would be where the ray comes from. Okay, it sounds like, yeah, like you're saying, like an offshoot of science fiction. All right. I have not heard of it, or maybe I've seen it but never heard it referenced before. What I'm drawing here, and I'm gonna be overlapping my title a little bit, but that's okay. I'm experimenting around with like a armored helmet. That's the design we've got going here. And these are also eyes on the front. I think one major trope of the Divine Being faction that I want to keep consistent is they don't have skin showing. Similar to the way they done the Personas in the Persona series, where you can't see the flesh or the actual skin of the person in the persona. It's like they're wearing like an armor or something obscuring the actual organic parts beneath. I like that idea. I kind of want to do something similar for this. Oh, I see. Lava King says Star Wars is an example of ray punk. So is it primarily driven by the type of tech being used? Because you mentioned like laser guns in Star Wars, obviously. In addition to the well-known iconic lightsabers, they have laser weaponry like the stormtroopers and the rebels use. Oh, I see Flash Gordon and Dune. All right, I can kind of see the aesthetic that they're going for when you talk about ray punk. But no, I'd never heard that term used before, so that's interesting. I do like science fiction. Ah, I see retro sci-fi, deep space with aliens. Love King also says, "Don't look up biopunk because that can ruin an appetite." It sounds like a very visceral. Actually, no, I've heard that term before. Biopunk is more like Guyver, right? Where you have kind of more of like an organic, visceral style for the stuff. There's an indie game out now that classifies itself as a biopunk beat 'em up that I want to play. I'll probably do it on stream at some point. I keep forgetting to queue that one up. Yeah. You can see like HR Giger pushed to extreme. Yeah, so you're gonna get a lot of really kind of like detailed bio-organic technology and stuff. I think that style is really cool. All right, let's keep iterating this idea of these helmets. and we'll see if we can drill down in the level of defining kind of gender-based specific tropes as well. That's not something I'm going to dwell a ton on. This faction will probably have sort of define like male and female specific designs, but it's going to be more thematic for the overall aesthetic, not like the male characters look this way or the female characters look this way. I don't really find that super interesting, but I think it'd be an interesting contrast to have different styles. So what we're doing here is doing profile things facing to the left and seeing what kind of ideas for this particular faction. This first one I think is a good start. It looks almost like a Warframe design now that I'm looking at it. Maybe without the eye parts, but considering I've never played Warframe, I only know the designs of the different character models in that game, which I do think look cool. We'll try and make sure we don't stray into I'm gonna get sued territory. Oh yeah, Bioshock would be kind of biopunk. And Love King asks, what's the war you're painting? You talking about the stuff that we're sketching here on stream? This is the premise for an upcoming music project. Again, not specifying which one or when, because it's a little bit further out. But the whole point, the idea that I want to map out for this project is this idea of these two factions that are in combat, in conflict. And the music and the art that's going to go with it, I want to reflect these different factions. So we're coming up with some ideas. And the first faction we're doing is the Divine Beings, which is why we're looking at like the biblically accurate angel type things and experimenting around some ideas for things that will be found within that faction. And then if we have some things that sort of stick, we'll move on to fleshing out like a fully sketched out figure, not just heads. But we're starting with heads. And then Natural Order is the other faction, which we talked about in the beginning, will be more kind of natural spirit, like pagan deity type faction, very druidic. So things you'd see in like a druidic order, things like that. And they're fighting these celestial entities that are from like a divine plane. I don't want to, I mentioned before, I don't want to call them angels because they're not supposed to be like heaven and hell type angels, but they're from like an ether plane. So kind of like another dimension as opposed to just, oh, they're from heaven. And, you know, it's not like heaven and hell or heaven and earth. It's two factions that are grounded in different planes. Yeah, you got it. So the divine versus the natural. Yeah. Because I didn't want it to be like heaven versus hell because it's been done to death, and I would be too worried about having things from like a lot of the current media that I've watched bleed into that. You know, I've mentioned before that I'm a big fan of the Vivzy Pop universe. I really liked Has Been Hotel, and I like Hell of a Boss. And that's like heaven versus hell with earth in between. And so I wouldn't want to just get pulled into the same tropes of those types of properties. So we're doing something a bit different. It's not like theological defined things or religiously defined things. I want it to be a lot more design and aesthetic based. Lava King says, I think SMT does heaven versus hell the best. SMT has a really cool take on that because it's not about necessarily right versus wrong. It's about which side do you feel aligned with the most, because every side has its own nuances. I've always liked the True Demon path in SMT games where instead of aligning with order, which is usually like the divine or heavenly faction, or chaotic faction, which is usually the demonic, the hell-based ones, I like going the unique faction, which is usually True Demon, which is neither. I'm going to take them both out. It depends on which game, because Nocturne had, yeah, it's neutral in a bunch of them, which usually results in the True Demon ending. So I'm not going to align myself with either faction. I'm going to take them both out and rule at the top, which is usually the most interesting ending, I find. do we want to do for this one? Maybe we go more of a faceplate this way. These are kind of like narrow gaps in the front part of the mask. And I kind of like the idea of multiple eyes that you're seeing shining from inside. Lava King says, "I mean Nocturne, aka the boring one? How dare you? Nocturne's an awesome game." I did play through it, well, maybe about halfway through it on the channel here, way when I first started streaming. But I made the mistake of starting on the wrong mode. So, Shin Megami Tensei 3 Nocturne was originally a PS2 game, and it was re-released in HD a handful of years ago on everything. Switch, Steam is where I was playing it, and it's probably the definitive edition to play if you want to play that old school SMT game, but it gives you a choice on which type of game to play. You can play the vanilla mode, or you can play the Maniacs mode, which has all of the content we got when it originally released in the West here. And all of the really fun stuff, including the crazy fiend battles, which are very difficult, some extra dungeons, and the true ending, I believe, or the true neutral ending. That one I don't know because I didn't play all the way through it. But if you don't start on the Maniacs mode, you start on the vanilla mode without all that stuff. And I got maybe a third of the way through the game before I realized I wasn't going to get to all the fun, juicy content that I wanted to show off. And that's why I stopped, because I didn't want to go and start the entire playthrough over again. But yeah, it's a good game. Did you play all the way through Nocturne, Lava King? If so, I don't think we've talked about it much. It would be cool if they release the older ones too. Like maybe port them to a more modern engine and release them. I will say that the HD remastered version of Nocturne improves the demon summoning thing from the original. Like, you get the ability to choose your skills on the demons you fuse, which is what's pretty standard in Persona. But in the original version of SMT3, you couldn't. It was random. It random rolled all of your demon skills when you fused them together. So if you wanted a certain combination of skills when you're fusing demons, you had to sit there and re-roll it over and over and over and over and over and over again. And it was really tedious. That was my one major gripe with the game. But in the HD version that came out later, you can just pick. Lava King says, I refuse to play Nocturne as I feel the ideology replacing Law and Chaos and having the MC be a demon yourself is uninteresting. Yeah, but a lot of them are like that. Four you were a regular person, but 5, the recent one that came out, you're a demon again. I really liked 5. I should go back and play the true neutral ending in that one. I got one of the faction endings, which is not as satisfying as the other ones. Plus, Nocturne also featured an appearance by Dante from the Devil May Cry series. It was advertised right on the box. I have the physical copy of Nocturne on PS2. And put good old Dante right on the cover. Phoenix says it sounds like you would take hours and be very annoying. Yeah, that's one of the problems with that random rolling system. And if you're someone like me who really likes min-maxing, get the perfect skill sets on your endgame demons, I definitely spent a good amount of time pushing reroll on the fuse. And it wasn't just reroll and you get your things. I think you have to go through the fusion animation every time. But they ended up making that more of a standard feature in the later games. Like Persona 3, I want to say, is the first one I played that let you just choose when you're doing fusion because it's a similar style of fusion system. Lava King says, I don't mind 5 because it's better at picking a side. 4 than 4. Neutral's not even possible without a guide. Lava King says, I hate min-maxing. Really? You'd think... Well, I guess it just depends on what you want to get out of a game. For party-based RPGs, I love like maxing out things on characters and whatnot. Like on topic, we've talked a little bit about Unicorn Overlord, which I'm actively playing right now on Switch. I am not going through that game at an incredibly fast pace because I want to like max out my party's levels at the progression points and see what kind of skills they get. And I've done a lot of grinding, and I think I put about 40 something hours into the game, and I think I'm maybe halfway. But if there's a way to grind up, I'll play a lot of those games for a really long time to come up with like the perfect combination, or even just have a maxed out party. And there's like 60 playable characters you can recruit in Unicorn Overlord, and then 64 random mercenaries you can just hire from the different classes. So it's a pretty big roster you can have to form squads in that game. It's really cool. I know Lava King was talking about getting Unicorn Overlord at some point, but that game is neat. I really like it. Oh, that's right. You mentioned Lava King, you're getting it for your birthday. You have to let me know what you think once you get into it. The story is fine. I don't think the story does anything too dramatically different, but I just like the fact there's a lot of characters. Alright, let's go for one singular eye on this one. And we have smaller ones around like this. They won't have pupils, but these are eyes here around, kind of in a radial pattern. Maybe have the eye kind of like that. Oh, did you play the demo? Yeah, I played the demo too. And then I didn't even get all the way through the demo. And I was like, yeah, I like the gameplay style for Unicorn Overlord. I'm just going to pick it up. But yeah, it does have a demo on Switch. So if you want to try it out, then you definitely can. It's made by Vanillaware. The people that made Odin Sphere, Dragon's Crown, 13 Sentinels. So the art is gorgeous in Unicorn Overlord. It's still kind of an anime style and like a fantasy universe, but the backgrounds are beautiful. The character designs are really cool. The food looks immaculate like always in the Vanillaware games. Mysterious Phoenix says, alright, I'm going to head out so I can take a nap. Have a good time zone, everyone. Alright, Phoenix, thanks for dropping by and hanging out. Go get some rest, drink water, and have yourself a good rest of your evening. I think on the topic of Unicorn Overlord, Lava King said, it's my favorite fantasy story where the royal needs a ragtag bunch of misfits to overthrow the ruling system of oppression. Yeah, it's a plot point that's been done, in a lot of different types of literature. Of course, you have like the deposed prince in this case has to reclaim his throne and basically overthrow the empire. Won't get into too many spoilers, but kind of like if you folks ever played the Suikoden games. The older series of RPG where the whole main thing is finding allies and recruiting people, so you end up with like 36 party members by the end of it. That's kind of the style for the party recruitment in Unicorn Overlord, but it's a board-based strategy, turn-based strategy game instead of like a typical regular like JRPG. And there's a ton of stuff to do. It's got a linear progression path, but you don't have to just beeline it to the main key quests. The map is massive, and you can wander around looking at side missions, side quests, and a lot of stuff. That's why it's taken me so long to just get through the main story, which is really cool. I like when you have options to do stuff that's not just go here and do all this. Yeah, the game doesn't necessarily have to reinvent the wheel, but if the core gameplay loop is interesting and the cast of characters is interesting and the gameplay is interesting, I know I use that word a lot, but if it's compelling on the gameplay level and everything else is good, then I will usually have no issues with games like that. As we look at a game like Into the Breach, which is a board-based, turn-based squad RPG type strategy game, the plot is very, very non-existent in Into the Breach, but the gameplay was awesome. And there were tons of things to do and unlock. And that's why I like that game so much. Unicorn Overlord is definitely more story-driven. There's a lot of different interactions with the characters, like a social link type system. I think you can marry one of them. You can choose to marry one of them, and it does. I haven't gotten there yet, but there is the ability to pick same gender partners, which is interesting too. I just don't know what bearing it has on the story. So yeah, I'll continue to update you folks on my progress through Unicorn Overlord. When I eventually beat the game, I'll give my thoughts on the experience as a whole, but it's probably going to be one of those 200-hour games before I beat it. In fact, Lava King will probably beat it before I do. Lava King says, I hate postmodern, and also when people say unironically. If you like it unironically, then just say you like it. Stop trying to intellectualize everything. I guess it's fine to say you like something genuinely instead of ironically. I don't know. Maybe the point of saying unironically is to specifically point out that it's not specifically for that reason. I don't know. I'm not a psychologist. what I'm doing here on this one down here, the more 3/4 angle, I'm thinking about kind of classes and the type of depicted characters here, since we've got a few here that would be kind of like armored warriors of sorts, and I've got some ideas on how to flesh that idea out a bit more. But I want to also think of the idea of like mages, spellcasters, people who'd be using like arcane arts. And so that's kind of what I'm looking at here. Maybe be a case of kind of like a hooded mage. But I do like the idea that the sort of mask over the face is still going to be a prominent feature. So even if this was like a person wearing a hood with like a robe, I'd want there to be kind of the more ornate features that a lot of the other ones have, kind of like gilded colors and stuff like that. So maybe we do something like kind of adornments or charms on parts that are secured, and maybe just as kind of like a placeholder, like jewelry or accessories that would be a bit more and kind of flashy and almost regal looking, I guess. Yeah, like you said, like an arcanist. Lofking says runes, you need more runes. Yeah, definitely things like the adornments, or especially armor and weapons specifically. We'll look at that stuff as we proceed here. I'm not just going to only draw heads, but doing things like talking about how runic patterns would work, because I do like drawing runic patterns. For this one, I'm kind of foreseeing a mix of kind of these line-based ones instead of shapes. So if we talk about like glyphs, that's probably the word I'm looking for. This is just like a random example. But we have patterns like this that we found on clothing, armor, and weapons. I think would be a good touch. Those are kind of a pain to render, but they can produce some really cool effects. And then I think the other faction, the more natural based one, instead of having runes like this, they might have patterns, kind of like, I don't want to say tribal patterns necessarily, but the runic patterns would instead be more kind of like paint, like war paint almost. So instead of it being kind of this writing based thing, it'd be more like patterns. I don't want to just draw a tribal thing here, but we could do something like this, or make it symbols and more kind of blocked in instead of lines. This is probably a better example of what I'm talking about, but things like this where it's more pictograph based, to contrast with what we see here. Okay, let me scale these down a bit, because I want them on screen, but I want to make some room. Let's make some room. And it's fine with the title. Leave that up there. Now we have a bit more space to work. We'll keep the sort of heads to the upper part of the canvas, and then I want to start sketching in a little bit some actual full figure primaries and some ideas. and we might not get to look the natural order today, but this is going to be something that I want to revisit at least a couple times as I'm developing this idea for the upcoming project. So if we don't get to anything with the natural order based ones today, I have some things that I'll be working on in the background that I can bring next time I look at this project. I was thinking kind of a lot of like animal skulls and kind of more like shamanistic type of design elements and whatnot. It might not necessarily just be people with like animal skulls on their heads. I do want to do something with that, but I also like the idea that they're not necessarily human. And I can't really, well, I've never really tried to draw anthro characters, but it could be a mix. Again, it's supposed to be more like natural order based things and the deity structure that they worship. So we'll have to see. Maybe we'll experiment around with some different ideas, but the point is that it's not necessarily just regular humans, because regular humans are boring. It's been done to death. But let's keep sketching out some more ideas for the heads. We'll do a side view of the kind of, like Lava King said, like an Arcanist or Mage type class. Another idea that popped into my brain as we were mapping stuff out that we can try. Again, not looking specifically at defining what the gender is, more so just the ideas, but the idea that there's, oh, that's gonna be kind of a challenge just to draw, but like wrappings. I'm not doing a terribly good job, but a good portion of the head is bound and wrapped with like a sturdy cloth or something that's almost kind of like a mummy, but bound all the way around. Lava King says, not mage, you need to think deeper, go for voodoo. That would be something that the natural order would be inclined to do. For the divine faction, it would be like your more stereotypical spellcaster type things. So like priests or like sorcerer types, because the magical alignment with them would be, again, it's like light based, and so voodoo and stuff like that wouldn't be for this particular faction. But again, kind of taking the idea of like a shamanistic type of druidic theme, that definitely be something for the other faction. Good, so we can put a pin in that for now. But if we have kind of these wrappings all the way around, and again, I'm not doing a super good job at showing this, but it'll be okay for now. We have two large eyes. I think this would be on like the middle of the head, looking at it directly sideways, pointing this way. And then maybe we have these sort of binding things that are keeping all the wrappings in place. These aren't additional eyes. These are meant to be sort of like bolts, anchoring them all in place. Maybe they go all the way through the flesh and they're anchored in the body. Maybe not. Could also do something like have the wrappings sort of trailing off. Like this, kind of like hair, but not really meant to invoke the imagery of hair, but probably does, whether you intend to or not. I think again this would be kind of like a robe or some sort of billowing garment I could foresee for this. Oh, we'll make the people's facing the same direction just for consistency. If I was really ambitious, and honestly I don't know if I'd be that ambitious, you could even do something like have runic patterns like inscribed on the cloth, but boy would that be a lot of work. It would look cool, but it would be a ton of work to do that on all of the different wrappings and things going all the way around. But let's just do it for funsies here. Do the same thing down here. A little bit hard to tell. If this was lined and inked, it'd be kind of like black writing. You could see really clearly contrasted against everything else. I actually don't dislike that. It's busy, but it creates an interesting effect. Huh. Well, keep that in mind. Don't dislike it. It would just be a giant pain in the rear to draw and render. I think if it was, it's not going to be animated, but if it was, think of the nightmare it'd be to try and animate something that has all this writing on it. Okay. That, I like that as a potential caster type design more than this one. This one's not bad, but the kind of large eyes make it a little bit goofy looking. But this one with just 2 eyes, but all of the wrappings around, I think I like the way that looks more. What is another type of class of character we'd want to define? We've got some warrior types, like armored warrior types. We have some casters. What is another type of, like a unit archetype you'd see in a faction in war? Red Dragon says stealth. Stealth, that's a good one. So like an assassin. Someone whose main theme is like infiltration and being able to not get caught. Lava King says rangers or scouts. We can kind of combine those together to create someone who's going to be, again, I'm thinking assassin class. Not go like ninja, like stereotypical ninja, but functioning like you would use a person who's a ninja class. Okay. I like it. I like it. We can do some stuff with that. Oh, let's save our work. How about that? We haven't saved once. Be ashamed to lose all this work. Okay, what would a divine stealth-based like scout class look like? Could do I'm thinking like kind of sleek lines, someone who's meant to be able to move quickly, so not something that looks really bulky and heavy looking. Original thought would be to maybe take this sort of idea of like a ninja type mask, but add in some of the kind of divine tropes that we're looking at. So to kind of fit the idea of like sleek lines. I don't say aerodynamic necessarily because we're not really designing like a plane, but if you think out something's going to move quickly, here, let me clear this out a little bit. My original thought was to take something, the head might be a little bit tall. You can flatten it a bit. Actually, let's do it this way. This might be a little easier to show what I'm trying to go for here. This is the kind of interior inside the mask. It's looking a bit more robotic, but we can kind of iterate the design a little bit and see what we come up with. Like Red Dragon saying, less stuff hanging off. So maybe with the exception of one or two bits, we don't want it to have a lot of like things all over the place, like spikes or hair or whatnot. We want it to be really kind of compact so that this particular type of character can move around unhindered. But I was thinking we take the idea of the eyes, and we have like 6 eyes, again looking from the side, inside the helmet. But we do want to still have kind of this idea of like a divine type look. And that's kind of the challenge here. Maybe what we have here are like crystals or stones inset into parts of the helmet. They wouldn't be bright, because we don't want to create things that are going to be really flashy. So they might be like really dark colored, maybe like a dark purple or dark blue to blend in. Because I'm also thinking not necessarily solely just like a ninja-based assassin, but also someone who could be like a ranged, like Lava King said, scout or type. So like an archer, someone who uses a bow. You'd want them to have kind of like a real streamlined look so that their outfit's not getting in the way of the weaponry they use. So this is a possibility, and one idea. I want to do a couple to see if we can land on something that's going to seem to fit for the class. Here's another idea that I was thinking. I was thinking we have kind of a similar idea with a face plate on the front. And I was thinking like a hood, but maybe we won't do that. Because my original thought was we have what looks kind of like blindfolds covering the surface. Like kind of thicker things that are wrapped around. They wouldn't be draping and hanging off like Red Dragon said, but they'd be kind of wrapped around. And I kind of like the idea that the eyes, very biblically accurate angel inspired for this particular one, but this particular character, because again they're like a scout or a ranger or assassin, needs to be able to see from any angle at any time. So there's lots of eyes all over. We could do some kind of like a textured pattern on the surface beneath, because it is supposed to be a helmet or some sort of head covering. And I think outfit wise it'd probably be like a real kind of compact garment, and something that someone who uses a lot of stealth based weaponry could use unhindered. To me, this one right here looks like someone who would be like a blade-based assassin. Someone who uses kind of short-bladed weaponry to like sneak up and kill people. This one potentially would be more like an archer or like a ranger scout. Again, taking the idea of the eyes being able to see targets all around from any which angle. Okay. Let's go ahead and save our progress here. And what I want to do is create a new layer. And I want to start playing around with some actual figures, not necessarily fully sketched out and rendered figures, but we're going to start with some poses and primaries, something I'm not terribly good at. But from there, I want to sort of map out some ideas for these characters, and we'll block it in kind of like this. And we'll sort of see as we go how we're going to define like maybe the gender specific stuff. That I'm not as worried about here. So much as the design itself. I really need to do more pose practice. It's probably one of my weaker things when it comes to drawing. It's why I draw a lot of like neutral pose stuff. So to kind of practice, we're doing something a little bit less. Just, you know, normally I do this. Real rough, I know, but normally I do like a standing 3/4 pose like that just to show off concepts. So we'll go for something a little bit less standard, just to experiment around here. Okay, that's fine for now. It doesn't need to be perfect. What we'll do is we'll create a new layer on top of this one and actually look at iterating some of these concepts that we've experimented around with here and fleshing them out more. So let's do one of the warrior types first. And we don't need to necessarily translate these ones up here. We've sketched out the heads, but we could take similar ideas. And we're going to sketch out some things and see what our results end up kind of looking like. Again, I'm not entirely sure if I'm going to keep the halos as part of the design. I think it's kind of a cool trope as far as showing like these kind of like heavenly celestial type beings, but I also like the idea of kind of flipping the trope on its head and changing the way the design looks. So it might not be like a metal angel halo normally, but more like a runic mark above their heads, so it's like made of light or energy. I think that could be a kind of cool way to kind of flip that idea around and try something new. Lava King says, winged knights? Yeah, that's another thing I was thinking about that I haven't quite decided yet. I don't think I'm going to go like full regular, like just to kind of to illustrate like feather winged angels because it's been done to death. But I like the idea of the wings being like almost more mechanical looking or energy based. And so an idea that I had, this is just going to be like a rough sketch here, but like it would look kind of like metal extensions that are around, almost like blades that are kind of floating behind. Again, this is an approximation. Lava King says, just don't do the one-winged thing. One wing is always dumb. Like, no, I wasn't really thinking about doing that, really. Because I'd like them to be functional. So even if it's like magical flight, in quotes, I don't really think, well, I don't know, we'll see. If it was asymmetrical, which I think is again, a cool trope to mess with for the Divine faction, then maybe the wings look different. Like one of them looks like this and the other one looks like an actual weapon or something like that. we'll see. But the idea would be, again, to stay away from the idea of your stereotypical feather winged angels, like we were saying. And what I'm doing here is doing kind of like a cuirass type of body protection armor, and then again the idea of eyes, maybe not eyes just for the sake of having them everywhere, but more eyes than you'd expect. Yeah, Love King says Archangel from X-Men. Yeah, he has they look like this. They're kind of like that, and then they look like bladed wings almost. That's not really the design type I was going for. It'd be more like, I'm gonna add kind of an example here, but almost kind of like runic patterns that are floating around. They don't have to be functional, like flapping, flying around wings. Probably more ornamental or even weaponry. But yeah, I don't want them to be attached. That's the thing, because it's just 1 degree of separation away from feathered wings to have them just be, oh yeah, they're metal wings that, you know, look like that. I'll do something a little bit different. Locking says, don't do eyes, do scanners. You mean like technology-based scanners, like computer? I do want this to be kind of, again, fantasy themed-ish, as opposed to like high-tech looking. I don't think that's what you meant, but just to clarify. So the armor designs are going to be more like fantasy instead of futuristic. I guess not futuristic is a better way to say it, because that's not the setting here. So for the shoulders, I was thinking kind of more like sharp pauldron type things. Maybe not like super crazy exaggerated pauldrons. For the lower body, I hadn't given this much thought, but we could do kind of like a mix of armor and it's like a monastic scapular. It's this part thing that kind of hangs down like that. I know it's been done to death, but we can mess around with the armor around it to make it not just, you know, really tropey looking. Like, I kind of like the idea that we have more adornments that go around. We can also add kind of more accessories and things to give it more detail. I think that's going to be key on both factions, is adding detail that's kind of thematically appropriate for each. We could even do things like for this part here, putting the runic patterning to show what some like the symbols look like, just an approximation here. Again, keeping in mind that one thing we want to do is not have any exposed skin for this particular faction. Things like the arms would be like gauntlets or bracers or vambraces to completely obscure and protect. And kind of like the idea of clawed gauntlets or gloves for the hands. We have a similar type of protection for the legs, greaves, or kind of like armored high boots with shin guards. Again, kind of tropey for quote unquote fantasy armor, but I do think these particular faction would want to be protected if they're going into battle. So what we'll do is we'll just rough in some approximations here. Okay, we'll kind of duplicate the design here on this side and won't worry too much about making it exact. I say that and then I'm just going to completely ignore the pauldrons. And for the weapon, I was thinking for this particular character, we can do like a closed fist holding on to the weapon. I was thinking like a pole arm for this one. Again, we'll figure out the wing situation in a minute. But for the weapon itself, I had this idea in my head before we started working on this today, of like a halberd type of polearm, so like a long reaching bladed polearm, but one that has a lot of eyes all over it. Think of kind of like a soul edge weapon, not necessarily the great sword that soul edge is by default, but in different versions in Soul Calibur, to sidebar there, whenever soul edge takes a different weapon form, it's always this kind of grotesque, multi-eyed, like almost Lovecraftian looking construct. And I kind of like the idea that for this faction, rather than, you know, your pure angelic weapons that look very pristine and clean and whatnot, like forged in divine blacksmithy, instead it's more kind of these grotesque weapons that have like an eye theme, like sight, insight. King says this is Yoshimitsu. Good old weird goofy ghost samurai man. who's also in Tekken. This almost looks more like a, yeah, it's kind of like a partisan or halberd. The design itself is a little bit weird, but the point isn't that it's supposed to be realistic. We wouldn't be doing bizarre celestial angel-esque creatures if we were worried about realism. That's not the point. Lava King says I prefer Raphael and Keelik and Necrid, True Weapon Master. I haven't covered Soul Calibur in a while. We did play 6 a bit on stream. I told you folks what my favorite character is. I played said character on stream a bit. 6 is great. It's too bad it doesn't have rollback netcode, so playing online is still kind of a nightmare. But yeah, I enjoy 6 a lot. It's a solid game. But my main in Soul Calibur is Voldo. Love me some Voldo. Yeah, it's a netcode problem, Lava King. Namco has not really been at the forefront of adopting rollback, and they added it retroactively to fighters, I believe, but for Soul Calibur, I think Tekken 8 has it as well now, but they didn't retroactively add it for 6. I don't think they're planning on it. The development's kind of ceased for that game. Lava King says, wait, seriously, that freak? Of course. Voldo's the man. It's psychological and physical warfare. His moveset is so fun. Ever since I got destroyed by a Voldo player in the arcades playing Soul Calibur 2, I was like, I need to learn how to do all that crazy stuff. And so he's been my main since 2. Been playing the series a while. I think it's Voldo first, then Siegfried. I play a lot of the cast. In 6 specifically, I played a lot of different characters, but I think Siegfried and Voldo, my top 2. Then maybe Cass. I liked Cassandra in 2 a lot. She's good in 6 too. It's a little bit different than way back in the day, but she has more of a unique moveset. Yeah, Tekken's always going to take priority over Soul Calibur, unfortunately. But 6 did decently well, so we'll see. Yeah, it was a miracle we even got 6, because 5 almost killed the franchise completely forever, and the fact that it didn't and we got 6 was kind of a miracle. There were a lot of problems with 5. And they're mostly narrative problems. The gameplay from 5 was fine. It played fine. It's just the story and characters sucked. The whole, like, oh, the kids are taking over was not received well. There was a lot of weird overtones with the brother and sister. That was also pretty off-putting for a lot of people. And so yeah, by all rights, 5 did kill the series. They had to reboot it in 6. It's a retelling of the first one. But we'll see. Maybe we'll get Soul Calibur 7. I will be the first person to play it if we do, because it's one of my favorite fighting game series of all time. One of my really good friends from Earth School, my sparring partner in Soul Calibur. We played matches ever since 2. First it was local back in the day, and then from 6 we played online a lot. He main Xianghua, and boy was that an obnoxious character to fight against. So the main matches going way back in the day was Voldo versus Xianghua. Forever. Hundreds of matches. Good times. Lava King says, also, I don't know where, but I was dumbfounded when I learned Miss Ditzy was apparently one of the protagonists. Who? I feel like that describes more than one character in the franchise, depending on which title you're playing. Oh, you're talking about Xianghua? Yeah, that's the character my friend mains. The one who uses like the short bladed or thin bladed sword. Yeah, she's her, Keelik, and Maxi are like the good guy trio. And then you have Mr. Broody McEdgelord, Siegfried, or Nightmare, depending on which game you're looking at. Yeah, I have hopes that maybe we'll see another Soul Calibur game at some point. We will see. All right, let's experiment around with an idea for a wing. And just for the record, Lava Kings, I know you're watching, and I know you're going to say something. I want to just come up with a pattern for a potential wing, and I'm only going to draw one. It's not a one wing design. I'm just drawing one wing. And if I was doing an actual render, I'd just copy, paste, and mirror it. So I don't want you yelling at me for doing a one wing design. Lava King says I'm always going to say something. Well, it's not like I can stop you. You'll find something to yell at me about, I'm sure. On the topic of Soul Calibur characters, Lava King says I always thought Mitsurugi, Taki, and Ivy were pro tags. Mitsurugi's not a good guy per se. He's kind of just a lone wolf more than anything else. And Taki is kind of a protagonist, depending on which game you're looking at. Like she fights Cervantes, I think. She's the one who breaks his version of Soul Edge. And Ivy is not really a good guy either. She's Cervantes' daughter. But she's kind of doing her own thing as well. But the kind of canon protagonists are the three. Keelik, Maxi, and Xianghua. And Lava King says, Ivy's outfit since 2 made and still makes me feel uncomfortable. They know what they're doing. They know what sells. I think 4? I think her outfit in 4 was kind of like the extreme edge of quote-unquote costume design. Like, I'm all for like revealing outfits if you want to do that. But I mean, come on, it was just straps. It was just straps across her chest in 4. And it was in the advertising was just like, boom, chest shot. It's like, come on, you could be a little more subtle than that. But it worked. Alpha King says Mitsurugi is like Akira from Virtual Fighter, where there's plot going on and he could not be bothered. Yeah, he's just out living his best life, getting into fights with people. Lava King says, thing is, Ivy had a full proper Victorian outfit in 2. Yeah, she had like the, not a pirate, but it was like a like an admiral, like a seagoing admiral's coat into her alt costume. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that one was really cool. It was really detailed and really classy looking. Instead of, BDSM step on me costume. And I only say that because she has a move where she literally steps on you. No, King says, I hate high heels in fighting games. Tell that to Japan. It's not about function, it's about aesthetics, clearly. Like, have you seen that one dude? I forget his name off the top of my head, but it's this one dude on TikTok who reviews fantasy armor. And one of his number one criticisms of like high fantasy and even stuff in like anime and whatnot is that armored knight type characters, female ones, always have high heels. It's really funny. It's true though. If it was actual functional armor, one thing, it wouldn't be boob armor, which I know everyone's always talked about that, because boob armor directs the path of the blade inwards to the chest, which is not a good idea. And you wouldn't have women running around in high heels if they're wearing armor. It would be very difficult to run around if you had high heels. And so whenever I've done like the different types of armor designs, I don't even know if I could draw high heels well, but I don't do that whenever I design like female characters, and I'm not really that good at it. Hey, the Prince is here. Prince says sometimes when you slay, you also gotta slay. What's happening, Prince? I haven't seen you in a long time, my dude. How are you? I'm gonna assume you've been busy with life or studies or some combination, but good to see ya. Everybody say hi to Prince Lemon, my only peer in the VTuber space that's a beatboxer. Yeah, are you gonna come back to streaming at some point? I did see Lava King said technically boob armor is historically real and dates back to Rome. I have read that it did sort of exist, but not in the same like exaggerated way that you see in like modern literature, where it's like cut off like bikini pieces of boob armor, but like functionally it wouldn't work if you were in real combat. But we all know that's not why people design stuff. Of course not. Prince says, busy with projects? I'll return someday. Well, good. Hopefully your projects are going well. I'd say you haven't missed much in the VTuber space, but if you've been on Twitter and seeing how on fire the VTuber community is constantly, that's not true. I tend to just avoid looking at that stuff. It bums me out. I just want to make things and stream and hang out with people. Lava King says, because with flesh comes horniness and that brings weakness. Yes, and horniness sells. Always and forever, the same as it ever was. All right. So this is a really simple and kind of quick sketch of a potential design for like a warrior type. I kind of departed a little bit with the helmet, but if we were doing this at a larger scale, I probably would have added more patterning and things with the eyes here. But let's zoom out and kind of take stock. Lava King says, that's a paragraph there. From the moment I understood the weakness of my flesh, it disgusted me. I craved the strength and certainty of steel. I aspired to the purity of the blessed machine. Your kind clings to your flesh as though it will not decay and fail you. One day, the crude biomass you call a temple will wither, and you will beg my kind to save you. I'm already saved. The machine is immortal. Even in death, I serve the Omnissiah. What is that a quote from? That's got to be a quote from something, right? Is that like a 40k quote? Red Dragon says, oh yeah, I'm thinking about getting a VTuber myself. Nice. You're talking about like a rigged model that will animate and like follow your movements. They're not cheap. I will warn you now. They aren't cheap, but if you plan on sticking with streaming content and you want to specifically work in like the VTuber space, think of it like an investment. I've thought about looking and shopping around for someone to do a new model for me, but again, it's expensive. I'd rather commission people to work on my projects than worry too much about my model. I think my model's fine. But it'd be cool to have another one. Let's see. I was thinking maybe we sketch out another class. We're doing on time. We're coming up on time shortly here. Maybe we can work on sketching a primary. I was thinking for the caster class. Let's see what kind of pose would we want for the caster class. Maybe kind of like a arms outstretched, casting a spell type pose. This is also kind of like a yatta I did it pose now I think about it, which is not really my intention, or even one of those. Red Dragon says, money isn't really the problem I have at the moment. It's what my character will look like. As if I don't like it, it's a waste of money. Well, I guess one thing to think about when it comes to a model is to come up with some prototype designs. That way you zero in on something that you like. And if you do what I did to kind of explain how I ended up with this model, I sketched out like a basic, it was like a chibi version. I don't have it on hand at the moment. But when I started talking to the artist I hired to make my model, I had like a rough prototype I created. And I said, hey, here's some basic things I'd like. Can you develop this into a fully fleshed out concept? And that's how I got the model you see here. But it just depends. Like what you want. Do you want like a humanoid anime character type of model? Do you want like a more creature-based one? I know you have your dragon avatar, right? It just kind of depends, but then you have to find someone that you can work with to kind of realize that, and that's the tough part. I will say that based on my experience, and I don't know if the prince is still here, but he made his own model, I believe, and his was 3D. Which is an entirely different avenue when it comes to the rigging and design. But if you go 2D, and you want like a live 2D one, which is what I've got, the price tag can range from a couple $100 in USD to 4 digits and up. Depending on what you're looking for, it's a big range. So I know like some people will charge at least $2,000 for a model for drawing and rigging. Some people only do the drawing, and some people only do the rigging. That's another part of the research to look at. So it's kind of just doing research, do market research to figure out what you want and who potentially you're going to work with. I'm not too connected into the rigging space now because it's been so long since I got mine done, and there's a lot more people out there in the space compared to when I first had my model made. But you could also, another thing, I got my artist from Fiverr. And so you can look on sites like Fiverr for people who will do like the commission work, and you can compare prices and see what the results look like. If you haven't looked there, I would, as part of your research, take a look and see what people have out there and get an idea for what you're looking for, and kind of go from there. It's just an investment, and I would say if you're going to stick with content creation and you're willing to make the investment, then go for it. But it ain't cheap. Prince says Vroid's 3D model creator is free and has a slight learning curve if you do your own. There are benefits to both 3D and 2D. It's all up to preferences. Yeah, and then you have to also account for the software and the hardware that you need in order to use said model. What did you use for your actual like VTuber software, Prince? Did you use VTube Studio, or did you use one of the other ones? Because I don't know much about 3D. Okay, VC Face. That one I'm not as familiar with. Is that normally one people use for 3D? I think, well, I don't even know anymore. I know VTube Studio is primarily used for like live 2D and two-dimensional VTuber stuff, but I started with PR Live, and then I switched to VTube Studio. No, that's not true. I started with the other one that changed to like a paid subscription. Name escapes me. I have to go look it up on my Steam library. But I switched from that one to PR, and then I switched to VTube Studio. And that's what I've been using ever since. Dragon says, see, I need to settle on what my OC looks like. Yep, that's the first step. Is coming up with what you want your base design to be, and then figuring out how someone's going to be able to realize it. Alright, I'm going to sketch out kind of a rough start for this. This would be like a major caster type, so let's see, we'll start roughing stuff in before we get ready to wrap up for the day today. I was thinking kind of like a palms out type of pose with the hands. We'll just rough it in. And I'm thinking we kind of go with the kind of like caster type robes, but we add some adornments to give it some kind of unique detail. I won't bother with any sort of additional parts. I think of all of the kind of caster type designs we came up with, even though it's the busiest and again be the most pain to draw, I think this one is my favorite. I'm definitely going to keep that one for potential future use. My dragon says, the big problem I'm having is the first artist. I could tell what mood they're in when they do art, and it feels like they're always upset with me. I see. That's a difficult situation to be in. But you can always see who else is out there. Commissions are tough. There's a reason why I don't work on commissions. One, because I work insanely slow. As you folks who've been watching these drawing streams over the last few years have seen. It takes me forever to finish something. I'm not gonna pretend that's not a problem. But if I had to do it for commissions, it'd be more difficult. Lava King says, Rako, I got a question about the war. The one that we're working on here. Yeah, shoot. What's your question? Why? What caused it? I was going to say, why is this happening? Good question. So the whole idea is there's these two factions that are at war here. The kind of celestial divine beings, which is what we've been working on today, and this kind of natural order of pagan deity spirit worshipping group. And why are they at odds? It's primarily comes down to territory. I haven't quite figured out who started it. That's one thing I haven't thought about a ton yet. But it comes down to territory and control. The divine beings see the other faction as their biggest threat, and vice versa. So the conflict, as cliche as it is over who has control over like the realm and the territory. And so it's a larger scale conflict that the story of the musical release is focusing on one sort of micro instance within this larger conflict. And the site, to give you folks an example of what the kind of setting is, the site is on the turf of the Natural Order faction. Their site is where this conflict is taking place in the story of the release. And so I've been working on the tracks for it, trying to have kind of like a mix of not really gospel, because I can't do gospel, but things that kind of sound ritualistic and almost holy, but then mixing in other themes. Because again, well, we'll talk about it more in the future, but it's specifically supposed to be thematically for a certain... All right, I'm just going to tell you. I can't explain it without mentioning. It's the Halloween album, all right? Halloween release. And so it's got to be kind of dark and experimental and have different moods, but it's incorporating a lot of... I've been working with a lot of organ and a lot of choir. So think of what we did for Blood Moon Rites, which was a bit more of a kind of loose idea narrative. This one I want to dial in more specifically to reflect like the factions themselves. So the divine beings are going to have kind of a more like gospel-y church kind of like melodic type of track, and then the natural order is going to be a bit more, not necessarily tribal, but it's going to be a bit more kind of grounded and kind of dark and almost more kind of dirty and primal, if that makes sense. It's all still going to be like electronic, so it's not like I'm suddenly doing a style that's way outside what I've done before. But this one's going to be thematically one of the most complicated ones I've done in a bit, and that's been an interesting challenge. And so to kind of wrap back around to what Lava King was asking about to begin with, the setting for the release is at like the main site of the Natural Order, their temple. And so the challenge will be trying to tell a story of these factions and what's going on in a way that has progression and kind of builds off the themes of the different factions. And we'll see how the art works, because I might be able to do it myself, but if I find one of my peers that can do it better, I will definitely hit them up for that. But yeah, the placeholder name for the release now, which I don't think I'm going to change, I think I like it the way it is the Lightbane Temple. Lightbane being the temple site of the Natural Order, meant to be in opposition to the divine beings, hence Lightbane. But I'm still planning the track list out. I've recorded a handful of them, working on some more. It's not done, but that's October. There will be another release before that, after SOTS. So we've got Songs of the Spiral this month, before the end of the month, and then there'll be a summer release, shooting for around, again, July, early August, and that's the collaboration with Plops. And then after summer, the next one will be in the fall. There may be an EP in between, but the next major release after summer is going to be in fall. So that's the kind of roadmap. I actually had a different plan for the Halloween release, and then I had a bunch of these ideas over the weekend and through the week that seemed more interesting to write. So I switched the whole focus of the project, which is what necessitated this drawing session today. And now I've got to kind of rewrite the track list to be in line with the kind of idea we're looking at here. But I think it'll be more interesting. So we'll see how all that works out. I've kind of ended up doing more of a fully fleshed out design for the caster here, which works fine for me. We'll get ready to wrap up shortly, but I'll center the halo a little bit better. Kind of like the idea of this thing in the middle. And as far as what kind of magic, we're talking before about how it's kind of more of your fantasy-based magic incantation type thing. But as far as what this mage is casting, that I don't know exactly, but let's just say it's kind of like a ball of light to start. But maybe it's a summon of some sorts. is the mouth. Kind of looks like a bomb from Final Fantasy. It just doesn't have eyes. I really would like to have this project be animated, but I think with this idea of these entities and these potential characters that are going to be part of it, I don't think that's really going to be feasible. I'd rather have the designs be a bit more cohesive and then just be static than it be animated. I think that would be a bit expensive. Ooh, I can even do this. Have like an eye inside the mouth. Be easier to render out if this was in color. Lava King says animation is expensive. Oh, I know. I'm paying for animation right now, and it's awesome, and the results are well worth it, but it ain't cheap. All right. Let us zoom out. We'll take the primary out here so we can see things a little bit better. There we go. And we'll save. I'll have to come up with a name for the factions as well. Originally, my name for the Natural Order, like their placeholder name, was the Terrestrials. People that are grounded and based again in a natural-based type of theology, I guess it would be. But I don't know if I'm going to keep that. I might come up with something a bit more descriptive. And for the divine beings, what did I placeholder for them? I think it was like Lightborn or something like that. Maybe not Lightborn, because light is in the title of the album. But something like that. I gotta come up with a name. But overall, this was productive. I didn't think I would get this many ideas together in one session, much less things that were a bit more fleshed out too. And I think it's partly because you folks gave me some good ideas as well, which is always helpful. Lava King says cosmic conflict. Yeah, I don't know if it's necessarily a big enough scale and scope to be considered cosmic. I don't know. That's another thing I got to think about from a narrative standpoint. There's a lot of things to consider beyond just character designs. Oh, interesting. That got auto-modded. Huh. Oh, that's why. That's okay. I guess we'll have to see if that comes up again, but yeah, you're okay, Lava King. It's fine. Magitek, like from Final Fantasy, is where that I know that term from. If we're talking about how to title the overall conflict and stuff, that's something else that I was thinking about. because it would be like, I don't necessarily want to call it just blank war, because it's a little bit, you know, cliched and basic, but yeah. We'll see. We'll see. There's a lot of ideas, because the title of the conflict isn't going to be part of the release, but it's definitely going to be something that we talk about when the actual project launches. So we will continue to brainstorm ideas. Again, this isn't the last time I'm going to be working on this on stream. So next time we do this, Lava King, I should have time to think about more of the lore and define stuff so that I can tell you exactly, you know, here's more of the defined setting, things like names for the factions, even names for like the classes, which I haven't thought too much about, but yeah, more to come. The next time we do this, it will be probably focusing on the other faction. And if I have time to put some stuff together before, then we won't start completely from scratch. But I think that would be a good exercise to kind of experiment with something that's be dramatically different from what we've got here. So we will approach that in the future. But before we get ready to jump off, let me see who's online that we can raid. Let's see, see Micro's online. Pull up my main list here. Not a ton of people are online right now. We could go raid Micro. She is playing Supermarket Simulator? Huh. Well, I'm gonna assume that's very much what it sounds like, but we can do that. So let me go ahead and get everything queued here. We'll go ahead and pause BGM. Mute you and go to outro. And so we will call that good here. Thanks again for hanging out and giving me such good ideas and feedback, folks. It's always appreciated to have more brains involved. We will be back on Saturday of this week. We have a special midday stream, and it'll be the second installment of the Elden Ring collab with Red Dragon. And we started new save files to use the multiplayer mod to make things a lot easier. And we'll be picking up where we left off right after we got through the Margit fight. We did that offline last weekend. I got to do some grinding and level up a bit before that session, but we will jump straight into Elden Ring and pick up. So if you want to see more pain and suffering, then come by at 12 noon on Saturday. I think we're going to be simul streaming, right, Red Dragon? They can check it out either on your channel or my channel or both at the same time. And it should be a hoot. I'm sure nothing will go wrong at all. But in the meantime, let's go head over to see how Micro's doing it, and I hope you folks have a good rest of your night.